Welcome everyone, lovely to see a full house today, completely also with our Māori Committee Chair and our Regional Planning Committee Co-Chair. So, lovely to see everyone. Just acknowledging the body that was found in Omahu this week and acknowledging Councillor Hokianga and his family. And Councillor Hokianga, would you be happy to open us?
Ka pai kia ora mai kia tātou. I roto i ngā poroporo aki o te wāiti nei, ka huri ngā whakaaro ki a rātou kua rūpeke hia ki toa te ārai. Ko rātou anō te tūtūtanga o te puahu te whiunga o te kupu no reira. Koutou rā ngā mate o te rā, o te wiki, o te marama o te tau. Haere hoki atu rā koutou ki te wāhi ngaro. Me te mea hoki nei, i te rā wiki kua pāhure nei, i mate ai tōku nei ka rangatahi, te ahua nei mā te mate kōhuru, hoi anō, tāria te wā ka mōhio marika, ka mōhio ka mārama pūana, me pēhea rā. Nō reira, whakaaro nui ana ki ngā mate katoa o te rohe nei, o tō tātou nei motu hoki, o reira tēnā koutou e whai wā ki te mihi mai ki ngā taumahatanga o tēnei matenga o tātou. I roto i ngā whakaaro nui, o tū mate aio. Tēnā tātou. Thank you, Chair, for that brief acknowledgement in the passing of a first cousin of mine. And despite the taumahatanga or the heaviness that grief brings families, it's the togetherness that families also seek comfort and wayfinding to move forward from these matters of bereavement. So thank you for those kind thoughts, and to the councillors here today. A myriad of blessings to each and every one of you, to our mana whenua reps also that often carry the burden as well. Nei rā te mihi atu rā kia koutou. Kia whaikaha nei ki te tuku atu tō tātou nei reo karakia to offer the words of prayer and not to replace the karakia this morning, but to enhance it, and what Councillor Waitoa has been able to offer us. Kia hora ai te marino anō tātou. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapau
te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou i te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou i a tātou katoa, hui e tai ki e.
Ai ki e kia tātou. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Hokianga. Welcome everyone, welcome staff, welcome everyone watching online this morning. The meeting's being live streamed on our council Facebook page and recorded to be watched later on YouTube at your leisure. Please drop cover and hold in an earthquake. If the shaking's long or strong, when it subsides, please leave the building through these exits and head up the hill, Napier Hill this way. And if the emergency alarm sounds, please evacuate the building this way to the grass on that side of the building. Toilets are located down the hallway for any visitors. Do we have any apologies to receive today? We do not, because we're a full house. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare in today's papers? There are none. I'm looking for any comments or corrections to the minutes of our previous meeting, please. If there are none, can I have a mover and a seconder for those, please?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Van Beek, and seconded Councillor McIntosh. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Thank you. We have no speakers in our public forum time today, so we're going to move to our decision items. Please, the first is item 5.1, the annual plan approach. We had our public workshop open public workshop yesterday. I'm sorry, that was on our LTP. Annual plan, we've had open workshops on that we've all been part of, and this is a summary of that work that Desiree will be leading. Chief Executive, did you wish to make any opening comments?
Only through you, Chair. Thank you to elected members for your guidance and decisions to date around the annual plan. And this paper summarises essentially where we have got to, or you have got to as a council, and sets out a proposition that means that you do not have to consult with community under legislation as you head into this annual plan, and also noting the considerable savings that have been made to get you down to a proposal of around 5.2%.
Thank you.
And I'll hand over to the team.
Welcome, Desiree. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Ata Maria, as the Chief Executive has said, this is an update on the development of the annual plan. And in particular, it looks at the levers that we've pulled to go from a forecast of 8.5 for year 3 of the long-term plan to what we're now proposing is a provisional 5.2% rate increase for 26-27. It also notes the changes to the fees and charges schedule, which are largely in line with inflation, with one exception, which is the gravel extraction fee, which is proposed to go to increase to catch up on previous years where it didn't meet inflation. And finally, it seeks a decision to take a non-consultative approach on the annual plan, as none of the 55 levels of service measures that were set for year 3 in the long-term plan are changed by this proposal. I'm happy to take questions.
Yes. Kia ora, thank you. Questions for the team?
Yeah, I've got one. Under point 28, staff will provide councillors with sample rates. We won't, so they'll be provided to us. Will the public at some stage see any of the impacts? Although, like we have done in the past, but for them to see the impact of 5.2 on their own rates?
Yeah, we should be able to get the rates calculator back up to that again. So we're just working through, we've just put in new rate system in terms of going on to a cloud-based version of Magic rather than the in-house based one. So we're just finalising, it went very well. And so now we're just doing a test rate strike on it to make sure that that all works well. And then once we've done that, we'll be able to start planning for when we'll be able to put up some information for the public to see the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
I just had a question regarding the fee and charges. What dollar term does that convert to?
So, Councillor Parsons, is your question in relation to the gravel extraction charge?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, under point 22, it shows the track change in the charge per cubic metre.
Mm-hmm.
So, it depends on how much you are extracting.
Yeah, I understand that. But so if you took what you charged last year and compare it to what's that going to look like with the new charges? I just have no idea.
Yeah. Sorry?
I'll come up. That's in the table. There's a version I have, has a struck out rate, which is the old rate, and next to that is the new rate. So
Yeah.
if I just look at the table, so that's the delta in dollars. So if we look at the general rate for Heretaunga, the old rate was $1.20. That was set in 2021. The new rate being set for next financial year is $1.47 per cubic metre. So that's
I have all that. What I'm asking, my question is, what does that, how much revenue is that giving us? Because I
Additional over
don't.
last year.
Pardon?
Additional over last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can answer through you, Chair. I just had a quick look. We get in about $1.4 million in revenue from the gravel fees. looking at these increases around about 20-25%, so that would
Yeah,
actually...
I can work it out now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rodley?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rodley?
Desi, thank you for the report, and yes, I agree, it's a good direction of travel. The key savings identified through the suite of numbers or paragraphs under 19, I'm assuming those are topics we're going to discuss at length as part of processing the annual plan, or is that it?
That's it. Through the previous 3 workshops, those are what we have landed on with you and your instruction to go from. So we remember we had 8.5 with uncontrollable costs, went up to 16.5. There was a sort of instruction. We worked progressively through those workshops using those levers to get to 5.2.
Thank you. Councillor Kaplinski?
I was wondering if you could talk more about the gravel fees, funny enough. Just, can you tell the public whether whether the regional council is making a profit out of this or not?
I will defer to Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Dolly.
So part of the reason we've asked for the fees to be increased is there's been no increase in 5 years to those fees. The other pressure is we're simply not recovering the funds to cover the cost of managing that resource. So there's currently a gap between what we're spending to manage that resource and what we're recovering from the industry. So we're in a position of not covering costs at the moment. Our position is to cover costs. Because we are a regional council acting under statute in terms of the consenting authority component of that, they are simply not allowed to create a profit. If you think of the science charges and other charges that are recovered, it's a neutrality. And in fact, if we over-recover, there's a requirement to reimburse the people who paid that. We're not strictly under that arrangement. Asset management has a consent to the consenting authority part of the regional council, and we have agreements with the industry. So it's not as tight as that, but the legal opinion or legal advice that we received when we were getting that consent is that we would be sailing very close to the wind to charge in excess of our costs. And the costs are generated by our obligations and work that we need to do under the consent, which are quite extensive. So that generates a number of reports and other activities that we need to do that generates the cost. So the current position is we're simply not recovering sufficient funds to meet the requirements of our consent.
Thank you.
Councillor Curtin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just continuing on around the fees and charges, turning to freshwater science charges, just for perhaps the new councillors on board, it's my understanding that freshwater science charges are charged on an actual and reasonable basis from the previous year. That is for 26-27 are based on 25-26 actual and reasonable. Can you just confirm that?
That is correct. The one that we make an adjustment for based on actual forecast spend during the year is the low flow monitoring, where there has been, and we brought that to council last time to actually reduce that individual charge. But the rest of the freshwater science charges are based on the budget for the year rather than the actual. The next year's budget is then adjusted for any overs or underspends that would have happened, and the following year fees would be adjusted.
Okay. And just to follow on from that, can you update us then of any waivers or default on current year charges that may be in play that will impact on that budget? In other words, is there a carry forward of any, if you like, over budget or under budgeted revenue that's taken into account for that calculation?
As far as I'm aware, for the last few years, we've been fairly close to budget in terms of our actual expenditure. So the fees being set around budget have been fairly reflective of the actual costs incurred.
And have we waived or are there any in default?
In terms of our outstanding at the moment, we have very little outstanding on our freshwater science, only about 19,000 in our over 90 days. We're just about to do the billing for the current year, so we're starting to work through that, and everyone will be billed in terms of the full expectation of our fees and charges policy.
And have there been any waivers?
That we have had a remission over the last couple of years for one party,
And the
and
value
that
of
have
that?
applied for it with a
Councillor
legal
Curtin.
impediment.
Councillor Curtin, it's not within this paper. Are you seeking
Well, we're talking about
gravel charges?
Changes to
Gravel
fees and use.
extraction charges, yes.
It says changes to fees
Gravel
and use, so-
extraction.
So
Thank you.
when can we address that, Madam Chair?
I'll come back to you on that, Councillor Waitoa.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to Councillor Rodley's question on page 11, 19.3, 19.5. So we've had clarification in full that it's 5.2%. So my question is that still rely on the assumption, particularly around the increase in the dividends requested in 19.3 from 13.5 million to 14.5 million, and any other saving measures that we have?
Yes, the 5.2 includes the increase in the dividend there.
Thank you, Councillor McElroy.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair. I'm just on this while I was asking Chris to stay on. 19.2.3 around the Wairoa growing. Do you know what the current status is? That for public information, please?
So the current status of the Wairoa groin is we this financial year put 100,000 into what we're calling pre-consenting work. So that work is being arranged, and contracts have either just been let or about to be let for that 100,000. We've put 200,000 proposed in this annual plan to take that work further, so that we understand the activities that we need to do to fully consent that structure, and we have highlighted in our component of the sector bid to government for co-funding that Wairoa is a high priority for this organisation. So that's the work that we've done, and so we are trying to better understand the work we need to do to consent that should funds become available to fund it. Highlighting that there's no funding within our current LTP to fund that groin, but we do have the significant funds for the greater flood resilience project in North Clyde.
So you're working up towards the consent, is that correct?
That's correct. So it's understanding any land that's required, who holds that land, the cultural issues, the local views, working with Wairoa District Council and Tato, plus some technical work around geotechnical. There's been a concept design developed. There's been a peer review of that concept design. So there's a fair amount been happening in the wings, so to speak, and so we're trying to be well prepared. So should funding or co-funding become available, we're strongly positioned to move on that project.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you. Just on point 17, in regards to the recap of what's happened, it says ratepayers are, however, impacted differently depending on the mix of general and targeted rates they pay. Does that mean that the 5.2% goes on the general rate only? Or I don't understand how that, I just don't understand it.
The 5.2% is the average increase in our rates. So if we take our total rate collection last year, 53.121 million, compared to our total rate collection for next year, almost 56 million, that's a 5.2% rate increase. However, individual ratepayers in there will pay different amounts than the 5.2% increase. For example, anyone around some of the NIWE schemes that have a targeted component on them, there are continuing increases because we've done quite a bit of work on them. So those people will see that targeted rate go up a reasonable amount in there. The general rate may, depending on how it all works through, but noting that on targeted rates we've probably only got some increases in the NIWE, the general rate will probably only go up less than the 5.2%. So there will be a number of households that will see a less than 5.2% rates increase, because there are some properties that will have a higher than 5.2% rates increase because of the NIWE schemes, which will have a significant increase in or a big increase in their targeted rates because the work is now happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rodley.
Thank you, Chair, for second go. Desi, whilst we're agreeing today to not go out to consultation, I know that when we do, we get this nice tidy packaged up piece of work to talk about the annual plan. Is there something that comes when you're not going to consultation that's kind of a similar packaged up piece of what we're doing as part of the annual plan?
Yep, so that's my team are working on the annual plan itself.
Yep.
So the annual plan document will be, say, a 100-page document. There'll be, at the front, there'll be what we're planning to do, some projects probably by TA area that we're planning to complete over the year, and then there'll be the financial, like the balance sheet and the profit and loss and all the financials, but there will be a story to be told about what we're doing, what you're getting for your 5.2% rate increase.
So it's an outward-facing document that's easy.
Yep, and it'll be supported by comms and marketing as well, so there'll be media releases, there could be some videos, there will be collateral that goes with the 100-page document. Actually, could even be slightly less than that, but there is definitely the story told at the front end of the document.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Parsons.
Sorry to do this, but just to clarify regarding the targeted rate. So, for example, if you're looking at Whirinaki, where I'm from, and there's mitigation happening, we know what that's going to cost for the targeted rate. Are you saying that that might increase now that the work started, or has it always been, you've been advised this is what it's going to be, it is staying like that?
So, remembering the only NIWE schemes that have it on targeted rate are those in the Heritonga Plains flood control scheme, so a few schemes there that won't have a massive impact on that targeted rate, and Whirinaki industrial part, that's a targeted rate. The Whirinaki residential part is charged to the general rate into there. So everyone across the region will be covering the
We have a
increase in the
targeted
costs in
rate.
there. Or a specific Whirinaki rate that was prior to this actual scheme, that won't be getting increased. That will be the same sort of maintenance and operating budget that there has been previously on there. So it's just in relation to the NIWE new schemes that are going in. That will be the increases.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ormsby.
Kia ora, Chair, and thanks, team. Could you give us a bit of a brief or a picture around lowering the increased rate, but what implications that may have on the rest of our LTP and the rate increase going forward? So by lowering this rate, which we, what is proposed today and which we've been workshopping, what financial impacts does that have for the next year?
I think the work that has been done so far to get the rate down to where it is getting down to a level of minimum level of service that we can do without having to consult. To actually lower it further would require some form of other funding to go in there, whether that be borrowing money, selling assets or anything like that, or actually cutting services, which would then require a consultation to go forward. The impact that would have on the LTP, if it was through the former of borrowing money, there would be a cost of repaying that money at some point in the future, which is what we did a couple of LTPs ago around the COVID time.
Yes, just one supplementary, thank you. And can you just remind us that the value of the dividend from our investment company to allow us to bring that general rate down?
So we have gone from a $13.5 million base dividend that was in our previous LTP and increased that up to $14.5 million.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you. So just picking up on the freshwater science charges, can we just take away as an action to have an update on freshwater science charges for this year, remissions, costs and the budget for next year, so we can understand that interaction, please? To come back, thank you. Councillor Van Beek.
Yeah, just in light of questions from the floor, I think point 28, I come back to it again. You're talking about a few sample rates. Would it be possible that you could actually bring us back maybe the calculator before we actually go public with that? So that around the table we actually can see where actually those rate increases fall. Would that be possible? If it's not, then that's fine with me too. But I always found it really helpful. So I can actually almost get into the moccasins of my ratepayers and find out what their impact will be.
I'll take that away and work with the team to try and achieve that for you.
Thank you. It's a great idea. It's a useful tool. Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations?
Happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor Rodley.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Van Beek. Councillor Rodley.
No, I think it's all covered. Looking forward to the detail coming, Desi, over the next little while, and also how you shape that into that story, because I know you're a master at it.
Yeah, well done to the team, and that's team in general, all of us, I believe. It would have been a lot nicer if it just had a 4 in front of it, but hey, it hasn't. But it's better than what we initially had indicated. So thank you very much for the work.
Any other comments? Yeah. Only comment from me is, I think we've come to a good place, 5.2, while maintaining levels of service. I think it's really impressive. So, motion, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Desi. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Item 5.2 is the CDEM Group Joint Committee Terms of Reference. It's pretty self-explanatory, but our CE, Dr. Pete, is now the acting chief executive for this committee. So would you like to make any opening comments?
Thank you, Chair. The joint committee requires to go back to each of its constituent councils to ask them to adopt the terms of reference. The joint committee for civil defence considered these at its recent meeting and essentially resolved that they were comfortable with the proposed terms of reference, and so they've now gone back to each council, who will go through the process over the next few weeks of looking to adopt those. And it's really a formal process step. As you know, through our FAIR committee, we will be providing additional reporting on civil defence capacity and capability across the system.
So today is receiving and considering them and adopting these terms of reference. If there was any significant changes, what would that mean?
That would mean we would have to go back to the joint committee and then back out from the joint committee to all 4 councils again.
Okay. So, your questions, comments? Could you take both, Councillor McElroy?
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment again on the 6.4, that the PSGs as treaty partners are only appointed in an advisory, non-voting role. So just like to comment on that and not support that they are advisory or non-voting members, but I know that it's under the LGA. And when we're considering our treaty partners, that's not the way to do it. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Record it, please.
Can you please just an explanation on how that's working, and also maybe touch on the submissions as well?
Through you, Chair, I think, Councillor McElroy, the Joint Committee would agree with your sentiment just expressed, and has submitted pretty strongly to government, which is now reviewing the emergency management legislation, that there should be voting rights for PSGs or for mana whenua at the Joint Committee table. We are awaiting government's view on that. In the meantime, I think the Joint Committee is doing the best it can to make sure the views, ideas and input of the PSGs is heard at the table in the way that it operates.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Waitoa.
Kia ora, Chair, thank you. Just page 20, 19.3, the Joint Committee is responsible for deciding the civil defence and emergency management levels of service and outcomes to be provided to the community. As administrating authority, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council is responsible for providing resource to achieve these outcomes. Just a question from me is, how does the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, how are we expected to manage the resource risk where the Joint Committee has set the levels of service and outcomes?
Through you, Chair,
Yes.
it's done via a service level agreement, which sets out what the individual council's functions are and what the role of the administering authority is. Essentially, as an administering authority, Hawke's Bay Regional Council supports the Emergency Management Office, and then the individual local councils support their local emergency management process and systems. So our role is directly into the Emergency Management Office. As part of your LTP process, you will receive, as a council, to consider in your role as the administering authority, some recommendations from the Joint Committee on funding and financing for the coming 3 years.
Yeah, so what is that level of ability to influence? Sorry, supplementary.
Ultimately, you take the final decision on the finances. It's always a slightly tricky balance in that the Joint Committee will come to you with a recommendation what it feels it needs to operate the Emergency Management Office.
Councillor Ormsby and then Councillor Kudu.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. The first is, did the Joint Committee explore other regions' terms of reference to try and get the best fit for our region, and was that discussed at the committee? And then the second question is, has the group management explored a Māori management position amongst the group?
Through you, Chair. No is my view of the first question. These terms of reference are relatively similar to the ones in the last term of the Joint Committee. In relation to the second question, yes, the Group Office is currently in the market advertising for that role. And so there will be a role embedded in the Group Office. And there's also an invitation to the PSGs to join the Coordinating Executive Group, the KEG, as well as the positions on the Joint Committee.
Could you just speak a little bit more about that role within the Group Office, because it is new and it's significant?
Certainly, through you, Chair. The role in the Group Office is very much a coordinating one across the region. So each of the local councils is directly responsible for the local interaction with marae, hapu, PSGs, and in the last Joint Committee papers there was a broad report on that work. The role that sits in the Group Office is very much a look across the environment that works with Māori across the region and provide that central coordination, conversations that might need to occur with multiple PSGs, where there are boundary issues that cross TA boundaries, etc.
Really good to hear, and just because it's significant and it is of value, I'd like to see at the right time the Joint Committee look to amend and include that into the terms of reference. That position amongst the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it Councillor Clifton next? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'd like to follow on from Councillor Waitoa's question in regard to the budget expenditure. But my question is around reporting and accountability. The Chief Executive has indicated that the service level agreement is something that's signed off by the Joint Committee, obviously with consultation with the Administering Council. And you are saying we have ultimate sign-off on that budget expenditure. Can you tell me then what reporting and accountability mechanisms are in place for either any council or particularly the administering council around that expenditure and the level of service?
So just to clarify, making sure I got my words right, the administering authority is responsible for its portion of the service level agreement. All of the chief executives of councils sign the service level agreement, so there's individual responsibilities there. The Joint Committee receives budget updates from the group office at its meetings, and those have been included through recent meetings. Those can be reported back to this council as well. In terms of what's then delivered against that budget, the Joint Committee essentially receives that report, receives a dashboard on things like transformation strategy, etc. Those Joint Committee papers and minutes are available to this council under your new FAR committee. Those financial matters can also be reported to FAR. I think there will always be a level of negotiation between the council and the Joint Committee, or this council and the Joint Committee, when it comes to setting LTP budgets.
Just supplementary to that, should the terms of reference actually include a reporting and accountability statement? I can find nothing in it. We've been singing the song for a while to get that. Should the terms of reference actually include some commentary and mechanism for reporting and accountability back particularly to the administering council?
This council can recommend changes to the terms of reference, just knowing that we will have to go through that supplementary process. I wonder whether you want to give some time to allow the process that's now set up both with our own FAR committee or FAIR committee, but also have a look at the Joint Committee papers in terms of what they report around governance. Ultimately, the governance role sits with the Joint Committee.
I think it would be interesting to explore what an addition to terms of reference would look like as the administrative authority as opposed to the reporting on service level agreements and delivery. So I think that's quite an interesting question. Could I recommend, if you're comfortable with that, Councillor Curtin, that as we go into the next FAIR committee, as we're starting to develop a little bit better within our own terms of reference for that, how the reporting for this comes back, that we look at how that might align to a change or an addition to this terms of reference to fit that?
Well, I'd probably defer to Councillor Waitoa in that regard to examine what sort of response we'd want back to the FAIR committee and to see whether it can be incorporated, perhaps. Trying it and seeing it for this current year with a view to incorporating some, if you like, mechanism in subsequent terms of reference.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. As that is developed, Councillor Waitoa, it would be good to align the terms of reference for the FAIR committee and what we're expecting to see around emergency management with perhaps an addition to the joint committee.
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Parsons?
I've got a few. I'll see which one's the most important though. I mean, I guess my questions the whole way through this whole thing has just been that point that I'm quite passionate about, concerned about, wanting, is that oversight of the joint committee around this table to make sure that there are expectations and outcomes that we get to see. And that's what I can't see in this terms of reference either. So does that, what we've just recommended there, would that, is that what we're addressing?
These are the terms of reference for the joint committee.
Yeah, I understand that.
To run, and all councillors can attend the joint committee meeting and the papers and see the structure of what's going on there, or indeed speak to me as chair of that before any joint committee members when you've seen the papers. What we're talking about here is the way in which the Fair Committee will be able to receive those assurance pieces out of the joint committee to have oversight. So we're really all talking about exactly the same
thing.
The same thing.
That's what I wanted to check.
How we're shaping that to give assurance to this table that the joint committee is adequately assuring that those processes are taking place.
Great, thank you. Point 18, this is just to clarify. It says the group office shall coordinate technical, expert planning and operational functions, performance monitoring, etc., as assigned to by the group. My question is this pre-disaster or after? Are we looking at...
That covers essentially the day-to-day functions of the emergency management office. So in peacetime,
yes,
that is broadly the description of their work. In post an event, they still have those roles, but it's all about response and recovery.
Thank you. That answers my question.
That's your question, thank you. Can I just encourage everyone again to look at the last CDEM papers and to give me your feedback on those assurance pieces and the way in which the dashboard is being developed, etc. That would be really useful for me and I think for the table to get a real picture of what's being developed there, because it would help inform the way we want to see it in FAIR as well. Any other questions? No? So the recommendations are to receive the terms of reference agreement, it's not significant, and adopting these terms of reference from the committee. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Kuklinski. Seconder? Move the terms of reference. Thank you, Councillor Parsons. Do you want to speak any more, either of you? Any other comments? Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Motion on the table. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, we have Louise here, who needs to be somewhere else, but we also have Tom here. Tom, you're here all day. Thank you. So with your agreement, can we please move to item 6.1, Reimagining Flood Project. And Tony's still with us. Thank you. Everyone happy with that? So item 6.1, Reimagining Flood Resilience Project Update. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Simon. Welcome, Louise. And we also, Councillor Van Beek, would you like to open with any comments as the chair of the Whakatanga scheme, or also Councillor Hawkins?
Okay, thank you very much. As you may all be aware, a lot of work has happened. It's a bit like the feet under the water of a duck, but the community really has been very much involved, and I think that's once again reticent of how important this project is to protect our region from another disaster, and how we're going to manage with that. We definitely can see in both the Tuki and the Heritonga focus groups that we have been able keep the attention of those attending, and that's a sign of how they appreciate being part of it, and especially I think we were at crossroads at some stage where we actually have been able to get an operational focus group, which has been really helpful. So I attended Monday's meeting at Elwood, where both groups were hard at work in wordsmithing and designing the final outcome of this. And unfortunately, Tony was an apology. But lots of work there, sitting on the background and listening to where they've got to and where they're getting to. There's a lot of knowledge, and this group is well prepared and educated by the process of what actually really is at stake and what influence they've got. So no doubt you'll hear from the group how this is going. But also I would like to say thank you to Louise and Simon, who are doing a stellar job in this space. And it has been quite trying, but the outcome hopefully will be evident of their hard work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Hokianga, do you want to add any comments?
Just through you, Chair, I have just a small contribution to add to that, and to reiterate Councillor Van Beek's words of thanks to the team. There's a lot of work going on in the background, and there's lots of reciprocity regarding the ability to capture the community voices, and it's in an authentic way, and they have been very vocal at times, and I think that's part of our roles and responsibility as Hawke's Bay Regional Council to make sure that that the opportunity for those voices to be making effective contributions to this space. Mana whenua uptake on the participation has been minimal, but it's been minimal from the beginning. But there are voices around the table that have been able to convey those messages, such as the Māori ward councillors from HDC. And I just want to, again, acknowledge the work of the team. Some of it appears to be repetitive, but repetitive to get it right. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thank you. Welcome, pass to the team.
Yeah, so obviously Louise and Simon, I'll hand to Louise in a minute, but really just want to outline that this has been a fantastic piece of work. It has felt quite rushed from time to time. And Louise will outline further presentations that will occur to the steering committee and also to this council. But the reason we need to get the views of the community, particularly around their vision and values of how they want flood resilience to look, is so that can be reflected in our long-term plan. And you've all been briefed on, I guess, the schedule and the huge amount of work that's required to be done to go into the long-term plan. So that's why there is quite a firm date around the middle of this year for getting that input, but it's certainly not the end of engagement with our communities, and out of this we'll be developing what other engagement needs to occur, and we'll be working through that with council. So I just wanted to highlight that we do have a firm date to engage with the LTP, but it's certainly not the end of this sort of work for council. So with that, really just hand to Louise and Simon to take you through the detail.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you, councillors. It's been a while since we were last in front of you to give you an update, probably towards the end of last year. So we'll just start with a quick project overview and recap, particularly for our more recent councillors, so that you can understand where this project comes from and where it sits in the wider scale of things. So this is one of our 6 priority projects that we developed post the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review recommendations. We will be coming back to you at the next council meeting at the end of April to give you our regular quarterly update on the other projects. So today we're just focusing on the Reimagining project.
The recommendations in the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review, you will remember, they speak to the Regional Council engaging with community and mana whenua at place and using local knowledge and getting information from the community rather than progressing with scheme reviews in isolation of community and local knowledge, etc. And we are also involving our partners and other stakeholders in this project. It's a very collaborative project. And it also talks to using alternative methods of flood resilience, like making room for the river and spillways and being able to design for oversized events. This project, while we have many schemes across the entire region, this project is focusing on the two major flood schemes, so the Upper Tukituki flood scheme in Central Hawke's Bay and the Heratonga Plains flood scheme, because combined they offer a level of resilience to 84% of the Hawke's Bay community. We worked with Council last year, probably in the middle of last year, to come up with the topics that we really wanted to engage with the community on. And these were the ones that we've kind of refined them down to and that we've posed to our stakeholder reference groups. So what do they want flood resilience schemes to deliver for the communities now and into the future? How do we balance management of flood risks from flooding with affordability? Some storm events will be too big for schemes. How do we actively manage floodwaters that overtop stop banks? How should flood resilience reflect Mataranga Maori? How can engineering solutions work alongside nature to provide improved flood resilience? And how much are communities willing to pay to increase their resilience to flooding, and how should this be paid for? So there have been some quite challenging questions to pose to our community groups, and there's been some quite robust discussion in our workshops with them, and some of that will come out later in this presentation. And just to remind you, Simon will go into more specific detail about the different parts of the structure, but this is the project structure that we developed with Council last year to have the most meaningful and collaborative outputs from it. So Hawke's Bay Regional Council sit there at the top as the ultimate decision maker through the long-term plan discussions that we will commence in June. The timeframes, so we are currently in phase 2A and B. So we are just coming to the end of the stakeholder reference group sessions. We had our final combined session on Monday, as Councillor Van Beek referenced, and we have a kind of closeout session this coming Monday where we hope our project champions and our chair will be in attendance to thank the participants and have an opportunity to talk to them about how they have felt about the process that they have been through. We will then be working with those stakeholder reference groups, Simon and I, through April, and we have a steering group meeting on the 21st of April where those stakeholder reference groups will present their outcomes to the steering groups. We have worked with those groups and determined that they want to speak themselves. So we've got members of the community that will come and speak directly to those steering groups. We then have some outputs that Simon will also reference further in this presentation from our focus groups. We have about 3 presentations there that will then hopefully in May also go to those steering groups. And then we have an action plan that will be drafted by the technical advisory group that's made up of operational staff that will also go to that steering group. And then we're hoping those steering groups will be able to make recommendations to this council by the end of May or beginning of June for you to then deliberate through your long-term plan discussions. Over to you.
Thanks, Louise. So, kia ora, councillors. I'll talk you through each sort of element of the structure and where each piece is up to as a quick update on each one. So, as Louise talked about, we have a TAG group that's been active now for, I think, about 18 months, I'd say, and it remains a great example of collaboration. So, between PSGEs and all the councils involved in those schemes, meeting every 3 weeks. Some key outputs we are leading through TAG include the leading practice review, which looks at, other examples of similar work from around the country and internationally, see what we can learn from that. There is some economic analysis underway by Infometrics that's due to be landed pretty shortly, and also compiling, modelling and research from a number of our partners. So a heap of work happening through the TAG. As Louise mentioned, a key thing for the TAG to work on is this action plan, and I'll perhaps come back to that in a couple of slides. For the steering groups, we have one for each scheme, each chaired by a councillor from this council, as you know. They have been meeting in a combined way since day one and continue to do so, which has been, I think, a really good way to bring the groups together. We most recently met in early March to listen to Tonka and Tara present the scheme reviews for both schemes, and shortly after that, presentation on the Mātauranga Māori framework from HBRIC and mana whenua engagement and how the SRGs are tracking. So the steering groups are really now towards the pointy end of their process. They'll be receiving their first major output at their next meeting on 21st of April, but we do need some more meetings, and I'll come to that shortly. The reference group. So Louise has covered this pretty well already, so this is coming to a close as well. We do have a wrap-up event this coming Monday, I think that is that right? Thank you. So they'll produce, and again I'll come to this, but their primary outcome is a visions and values document. They're slightly different, albeit still in sort of final draft form, but the Upper Tuki has produced visions, values and expected outcomes, where the Heretaunga Plains Group has produced visions, values, principles and recommendations. So we'll present those to you shortly. TNT are working on the final write-up of that, and we're looking for members themselves to present their advice directly to the steering groups at the 21st of April meeting. The focus groups, I guess, is where the most movement has happened in this project. We had a nice, neat and tidy plan on a page before we started this process. Hasn't quite gone to plan, but I think actually has become a bit richer as a result. So plan A, I suppose, on a page was that the focus groups would be set up to support the SRGs. We were going to produce these or develop or set up 5 initial focus groups, 4 for mana whenua to contribute in, so based on awa-based groups, the Tūtākuri, Ngarodoro, Tuki and Waipawa, and a 5th group for rangatahi to contribute in. That was sort of plan A, with a space that should there be additional matters or sectors the SRGs felt required a deeper dive, we could set up further focus groups to support that conversation. But how has emerged, I guess, through our process is actually we've set up only 3 focus groups currently active. So the Tūtākuri Awa focus group is up and running and well placed to produce some advice into this process. Likewise, the Rangatahi focus group had their meeting a couple of weeks ago, and also likely to produce some outputs. Councillor Van Beek has mentioned the operations focus group as another group that is up and running and well placed to produce their outputs. But in each case, rather than present through the steering groups, they'll present directly to the focus group, and I'll cover that shortly as to why that's the case. We do have a couple in progress, so the Ngarodoro Awa and the Tuki Waipawa Awa groups are not set up originally planned, but there is some really good outcomes emerging through some research by Nikki, which we expect will help through, I guess, leaning on that outcome from that research inform this project. So that's a work in progress, but is shaping up well to deliver some outcomes this project can refer to, not as a replacement for engagement, but as a good way to reflect outcomes from other research that can directly inform this work. As a little side note to the main project structure, there's also a really important conversation emerging on the Awatoto bridges. As you'll all be aware, this has been pointed to as one of the major constraints for the Heretaunga Plains scheme, is a restriction at the mouth there. We have been meeting with NZTA, Kiwi Rail and the 2 TAs for about 6 to 8 months or so to work through how we might respond to this issue. We have had some specific modelling by TNT done to show what those bridges do upstream of that point, to show the impact of them, which has been really helpful. There's also some work by Infometrics looking specifically at the economic impact of that constraint. So if the bridges are worth X, what's the cost of extra flooding caused by those bridges? That work is near conclusion, I'd say, and we're looking to keep working with those agencies on where to from here. We think as a first outcome, almost like a memorandum of agreement could be a first step to say, well, recognise the issues here, let's agree that a cross-agency response is required and move forward from there. A key complication is the intention for NZTA to hand that asset back to the TA, so that does complicate the conversation, but certainly part of the mix for further work. So this slide is overly complex, I acknowledge that, but it was a way for us as a group to try and track how deliverables would move through the various parts of the project structure to ultimately land at this table and then flow through to the long-term plan. So this is kind of, again, plan A on a page with the focus group set up on the left-hand side, feeding into the SRGs through their 5 key sessions. Then with each of those SRGs producing a community vision for flood resilience, landing then into each steering group for each scheme. I mentioned before this action plan from TAG, that's a critical piece of this work. We're mindful that the visions documents are going to be quite high level and direction setting, but this council's been clear that we need some tangible outcomes for the long-term plan. So that's where the TAG action plan comes in, looking to translate that high level direction into what could this mean for years 1 to 3 of the long-term plan and beyond, to translate that sort of high level direction into tangible projects. So that was plan A, and if I go to the next slide, this is a simplified version of that. So you've got the 2 visions for flood resilience coming in, one from each of those reference groups, and the TAG action plan coming as well into the steering group, landing at this council and then flowing through into long-term plan outcomes. But I mentioned before the focus group shift, so we have, I guess, designed the plane a little bit as we flew it and changed things around a little bit. The focus groups will now report directly into the steering groups. That was deliberate for a couple of reasons. One was just simply a timing issue. We couldn't quite get some of those focus groups up and running in time for them to inform the SRGs. So there's a parallel, but also a scope issue. So particularly the operations focus group are right into the weeds around daily maintenance, operations, gravel management, that sort of thing. Not in scope for the SRGs, but still an important conversation to have. So a little bit to the side of the main process. That does mean, I suppose, a broader range of outputs for the steering groups to grapple with and feed through to this council, but does provide that richness and diversity that I think will be beneficial overall. So I guess some heads up for you, there's quite a lot coming your way, and how that will look timing-wise, given these multiple inputs. This is, I guess, a sketching out of the next couple of months. So that 21st of April SRG is an essential meeting. It's a critical one where the steering groups will receive the reference group reports presented directly by members from those groups. In early May, and that's timed to be a little bit staggered, we expect the Awa-based focus groups to be ready to report. That's still on track, alongside the operations focus group. So those focus groups will report in early May. In late May, to provide a bit of space for TAG to consider all those various elements and produce their action plan to reflect that. That will land at the steering groups. And then early June, all of that will arrive at this council for a workshop, with the plan that in late June there'll be a formal receipt by this council of project outcomes. As Chris mentioned, that's essential to make sure it feeds into long-term plan processes. And this last slide really points to what will that look like when it lands at this table. And really we're looking at almost a compilation of multiple parts. So the steering groups will produce this kind of forward or covering advice to HBRC, covering the whole project and its outcomes. We'll have in their part A just a general kind of background and project context. And then to the main parts, so B and C will be the word-for-word verbatim outcomes from the SRGs. D, the Rangatahi focus group outcomes. E and F from Mana Whenua focus groups. G will be the operations focus groups. And lastly, to wrap it all up, will be the TAG action plan. So that should present a cohesive story linked to action for this council to receive and consider in June. I think that's my last slide.
Yes.
Happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Chris. So there isn't a lot for us to do within the process right now, which is rolling on as you see and winding up on Monday. when we get this in June for workshop, I think that's the opportunity for us to bring some feedback or push and pull or ask questions, which can then be refined for the actual paper that we'll receive at the end of June to take forward as the basis for our long-term planning. But after that is when we also then step into wider engagement with the whole community. So just to be sure everyone understands that this still goes out to the wider community to be looked at. So are there any questions on what was going on? Thank you, Councillor Roadley.
Pretty exciting to see this coming to this stage, so thank you, team. On Monday, when you do the that coming together piece, do you have a time and could you do it via Teams as well? Is that possible?
It's at Elwood Function Centre. It's a little bit tricky to have Teams there. It's between 6 and 8 on Monday evening. I mean, all councillors are obviously welcome. But I think a Teams thing might be, I can check with Tonkin and Taylor who are running it, but logistics might be a bit tricky for that.
If it could. Thanks,
Could
Louise.
you put an invite out for all councillors? It would be lovely. It'd be nice to see as many as you can there, and you'll meet both
there.
groups. There's about 70 people in the two groups, is that right?
Yes, combined. So we're expecting about 60, between 50 and 60 of the SRG members there.
Brilliant, thank you. Tanya Hopmans and then Councillor Van Beek.
Hi, Atamari Koto. Kia ora, Simon. I was just interested to hear a little bit more about the rangatahi focus group and the benefits that you've seen from having that group's involvement.
Kia ora, Tanya, probably best for Louise to speak to that.
Yeah.
You went to the
I
session.
did, Kia ora, Tanya. So we, you may remember we did a region-wide survey in February, from the 2nd to the 20th of February. Alongside that, we did a youth or rangatahi focused survey as well, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but the comms team managed to use social media to target youth. So we have youth-specific responses to that survey, which are currently sitting with Tonkin and Taylor, and they're writing up the analysis of that. But we also met with representatives from the youth councils, so Hastings and Napier, Central Hawke's Bay. So there were youth there from all over, maybe not Wairau, unfortunately, but and we had a session very similar with them that we'd run with the stakeholder reference groups about individually thinking about what a vision statement would be for them for the future and what some of the values are or were from them that they wanted to see, and then they worked together as a group to refine that down to some really key values. The output from them, and I don't have all the details in front of me, but Tonkin and Taylor did go through some of those on Monday when we met with the stakeholder reference groups, are surprisingly not too dissimilar to what the stakeholder reference groups had come up with. So it very much is that people first, security of people, but also having long-term solutions, not just leaving it to someone in the future to work out the solution, but actually let's start thinking about it now. And that came through quite strongly. So we'll obviously that will be in the report, but maybe at our next update we can also share more from the community surveys, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Van Beek?
Yeah, just a question to you guys. As we have Plan A, Plan B, with all those changes, have we been able to keep within budget of the plan?
Budget has probably creeped up a little bit. We've had more, obviously, meetings and things with the extra operations focus groups, which has required more support for that and Simon's time. And also we had a weather event in February, which meant that we had to cancel one of our, or abandon, we ran the stakeholder reference group. And so we had all the staff that was required for that on the ground here. But because of loss of power, etc., in Central Hawke's Bay on that day, we abandoned that stakeholder reference group. And so we had to put another one in, and that has added additional costs. But we are not too far over where we thought we would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh.
A couple of questions.
The infometrics reports, so is it reports plural? So is there one on reimagining generally and a second one on Awatoto?
Yeah, that's right. So there's a broad one still in draft looking at the overall benefit cost ratios for both schemes. That's sort of output one. And output two is a much more focused look at the Awatoto bridges specifically. So there'll be two parts, well, one report, but two parts. One much more focused, one broader.
Okay. And so with Awatoto, I'm sort of really keen to know that that's happening. This is probably a comment more than anything else. The scary thing about that is the solution that it's likely to recommend, because that solution could suck up all the money itself, I think. You know, if you're talking about if those bridges are the problem, so you've got to take them out and do something different, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, well, maybe we should wait until we see the results rather than guess what the outcome might be. So that's at one end of the scale. I think we've got a lot of smart people working on it. So we will bring you that information when it's been, properly worked through. But I think let's not necessarily guess that there's only one solution. And
Sorry, can I have one more?
Sure.
Can you tell me, please, that what are we likely to see in the technical advisory group action plan? What's that going to tell us?
Sure. So that's evolving as we speak. It's a little bit difficult to write it until we have the outputs to then reflect into it. But the thinking is it will target some clear advice to HBRIC on how you might prioritise work in years 1 to 3 of your long-term plan. So Chris's team has this huge pipeline of possible projects. We think that this output could usefully help inform which might be prioritised in time based on those values outcomes. That's one. Another piece this action plan will likely do is recommend where to from here and what might be required to drive that. So the bridges at Awatoto is a good one, right? There's more work required around next steps. If we're looking at strategic land acquisition, that sort of longer term projects, almost like a phase 2, what might that look like? So really we're looking at a combination of tangible, immediate, long-term plan orientated advice alongside more kind of project orientated next steps.
Okay, thank you.
And the workshop will give us the opportunity to really spend time with all of those pieces before we come to formal council with that. Councillor Kuklinski, and then last from Councillor Curtin, because and Councillor Parsons. Okay, can we just have one each and keep them a little bit short,
it's just not it's not a question. I was just going to say I've been waist deep in this since I was elected in the Apatoki and the operations. I think I've only missed one in the Apatoki. And just thank you for your work. It's a real pleasure to be part of this. There's some great work going on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kuklinski. Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the financial layer update, which I'm very pleased to see because it gives a great deal more transparency than for this particular work. It's important work. I note, for example, the comms engagement support, a little overrun on there. It doesn't worry me at all. I think that's good. But there's an important thing that I'm hoping that we get out of this project. The total budget 2.2 or 2.5 million in this project. We've got to get a lot out of it. One of the things that I want to ask then is, and goes to comms engagement, is the reducing flood risk in Hawke's Bay. Is there a sense, or do we analyse the uptake of the comms that we're putting out? Do people understand what's the level of uptake, particularly for the focus groups, for the wider public? What does that whole ecosystem look like? And are we getting the message across around particularly the 600 mil global number? And it tags on to Councillor McIntosh's question around do the people contributing understand the context and the implications for rates or expenditure going forward, and the analysis, the analogy is with the coastal hazards, tempering that whole environment. Can you give us a view of what that looks like?
Can I ask for a relatively brief answer, but can I ask that all of those points that Councillor Curtin's raised are particularly brought back for that workshop as well in a little bit more depth?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be a really important piece for us to understand. So a shorter answer now, but that when we have that workshop, we have a bit of a picture on that.
So I'll start maybe at the very high level. So our GM looking after our comms and engagement team has previously presented to this council on the use of metrics about how effective communication is, particularly around our priorities, and flood resilience being one of those priorities. So that's a key component, and I don't want to cross over that.
Mm-hmm.
But the team here can probably talk about the engagement with the community, and they're probably their level of how well those participants sort of understand the issues.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. I can't talk about the wider metrics. That is for the comms team. They've managed that part of it. But certainly everybody, so the 70 participants we had in the stakeholder reference groups have all had a copy of that Reducing Flood Risk in Hawke's Bay document. It's been part of the folder of information that they've been given. We had our Chief Financial Officer come and speak to those groups specifically about rates and the long-term plan process, and how the two work, and the costs and how those are shared out, and the cost of this, the whole kind of flooding future, flood resilience, coastal hazard piece of work is, hugely costly and over decades of work. So I feel that particular group has been well informed. I also understand from our comms team that there is, between now and the long-term plan process, a comms and engagement piece of work in the pipeline where the three strategic activities or outcomes that you have chosen as a council will be broken down into sort of 2 or 3 months at a time, focusing on those topics and issues, one of them being reducing flood risk, and I know that the focus will be that document that is based on. So I don't know if you want to...
Thank you. Last question, Councillor Parsons.
Okay, one question because it's about finance, but it's in 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Just in regards to staff, total internal time, I'm just curious as to why there's no budget in there. Are they new positions? Are they just...
So we are seconded from another team. So Katrina Brunton from in the Policy and Reg is home base, and she has very kindly donated our time.
So it nets out at another level. So I think we can take it on board. We can improve that because it's a technical table, but effectively the resources are paid for in another department. And so they're shown here as a cost, but then they're netted off to zero through the budget that sits in another department, is my understanding.
Yeah, cool. And the other question was in regards to trigger levels, interim pilot, 100K budget. Is that, what is that, and has it started, and is it in the ESC?
The short answer is yes. It is one of our key projects. We'll be giving an update at our next council meeting. We give a quarterly update on those projects. That project has started, and yes, it is in the ESC, and it is with Hastings District Council. So the TAs are leading the community engagement side of that project, and HBRIC are producing the flood modelling and data that sits behind to support that work. But we'll give you a full update at the April council meeting on that project.
Okay, I wondered if I could talk to you offline about that just briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have recommendations to receive, we're on item 6, aren't we? To receive, just to receive the project update. Happy to move from the chair. Councillor McElroy, thank you. Second, do you want to make any further comments? No, thank you. No other comments? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Thank you. Team, lovely to see you. We are going back to item 5.3. And welcome back, Tom, from HBRIC. 5.3. This is the draft HBRIC Statement of Intent for 26-27. make any opening comments? No, pass straight to Tom. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome back.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Just a quick piece, I'll take the thing as read, but just a quick piece of context, because I think it sort of came up in the earlier civil defence questions, which were a lot were focused around how does council maintain oversight and governance of HBRIC and what it's doing. And so I think elsewhere I've described the levers by which council kind of directs and influences HBRIC, because you are our 100% shareholder. I call them the 4 S's. There's the statement of expectations, which traditionally this organisation doesn't issue very often, generally when there's a big change. And so the most recent statement of expectations was issued in November 2023. The statement of expectations is a statement from council as to what they expect from the shareholder. The statement of intent is us communicating back to you, have we got it right? This is what we think you said, a bit more detail and some statutory requirements that's in the Local Government Act. And the other 2 levers that you have in relation to how HBRIC operates is the Statement of Investment Policies and Objectives, which is again a document that comes back to you periodically for review. And finally, the 4th lever is the selection of directors, because you have you choose all the directors that sit on HBRIC, including councillor directors. And look, and you probably could add a 5th S while we're on the letter S, which would be statutory controls in terms of what are HBRIC's obligations under the Companies Act and the Local Government Act and other bits of legislation. So just to provide some context for what the statement of intent. I'm here to hear your feedback. Staff have provided some feedback and I've received that, and we'll incorporate that, and I'll take that back to directors, and then this document comes back to you. It might come back in a slightly different, more professional form before June 2026.
Excellent, thank you. We can have questions and comments back to Tom all at once. So, are there any? Yes, Councillor Whitehall.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you. Kia ora, Tom. Going to take you on a little tiki tour. So item 53, item 53, which we're on page 23, items 5.6 to 5.9, and in the draft SOI at page 34, 35. Don't expect you all to follow this at the moment. The financial year 27 distribution expectations states 13.5 million. If we go back to our opening annual plan on 5.1, page 11, item 19.3, the annual plan relies on a 14.5 million dividend request. So my question really is, which figure should this council treat going forward?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Going back to our opening comments, the statement of intent, the statement of expectations that was drafted in November 2023 was an output of quite a large strategic investment review of the investment assets. We had an independent external party came back, and they came and effectively laid out what they felt that the portfolio in its current position could offer up in terms of a sustainable cash dividend going forward. And the statement of expectation was delivered on that expectations, and then I think those numbers kind of went into a long-term plan or something like that. In between time, Council has issued some updated letters of request and advice, which have been, really around the context of the operating environment that Council has been in. And so those numbers have changed, and there's been ongoing dialogue. We have councillor directors sitting around the table, ongoing dialogue around, are there any annual variations to that? So so we have a number sitting in long-term plan document that points to a number, and then we periodically get a letter from you asking us if we can revisit that number.
Councillor Rodley.
I'm hoping this is not a really dumb question, Tom. You'll forgive me if it is. But is it usual in the table you've got on
whatever page that is, or it's the start, the About Us piece, you've got a table with some figures about what's liquid and what's illiquid. Is it usual to have that kind of level of cash sitting in the kitty? But, well, it's listed there as 8 million. It seems like quite a lot to be just sitting in the...
Yeah, so that, at the
Is that
time...
saving up to give to the regional council?
You mean the ratepayers?
We'll spend it for them, on them.
What I'd offer is that there's a link between running intergenerational investments and running a sustainable distribution policy that supports those objectives. But yeah, HBRIC is sitting on, there was more cash came out of the port through a special dividend, but we had is a little bit in terms of how we're funding the distribution across the year. Some of that money, I believe, has since come out and gone into a dividend resilience reserve. To top that up, and so that, and we've also there's a final capital contribution to Food East going out scheduled to Food East, so there's some money set there. But yeah, so part of the discussion at the next board meeting is going to be, and I think it's a May board meeting, is around the final distributions and how's that funded, from various things. And obviously with, global markets in the shape that they're in, we're probably going to be looking more at our cash reserves and, and hopefully port dividends as opposed to, drawing from, returns and managed funds.
So it's quite a technical document, but just so councillors are aware, HBRC staff have also assessed this and made comments, so it has been reviewed effectively from our side of the partnership as well. Councillor McIntosh?
Well, actually, just a comment, Chair. I think this SOI actually does a good job of incorporating the things that are necessary as a consequence of the evolving environment that we have with them. So I think it covers those bases well.
Thank you. Councillor Ormsby?
Just a question, hopefully you can answer it, Tom, but it's about the 2 million in the dividend resilience reserve. And for councillors, we established that 3-4 years ago, possibly?
That was the requirement in your 23 expectations.
23, yes. Statement of expectations, that's right. So what are the specific portfolio adjustments or reserve sources that will enable the growth while maintaining the required distribution to council that we've sort of expect, especially if the managed funds do not perform? So what are those portfolio adjustments and what's the plan there to keep that 2 million reserve healthy?
So the dividend resilience reserve is a reserve that sits within HBRIC, and so we have effectively we've allocated that into the managed funds portfolio actually because there's very good liquidity in that portfolio. So rather than having that sitting in cash, not earning, we're trying to manage that as best we can. So those funds sit in HBRIC's managed funds portfolio. So
what adjustments can be made within the managed funds portfolio to keep it at that 2 million and the growth that's expected in the reserve?
So what we're going to try and do is we're actually going to try and, from overall returns, we will try to we will physically add money to that on an annual basis. We're trying to grow at least a minimum of $2 million a year until it reaches its number around 12 million is the target for that. And then we've got a sort of an internal policy around how we manage that. We don't want it to keep on going up because then that's depriving you of dividend, and then if it gets drawn down, how do we get back to it? So there's this effectively...
And if we get to a point where we can't keep that 2 million growth a year, you'll come back to the council and talk about risk appetite with the portfolios?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments or questions? No? So we have a recommendation to receive the statement of intent, agree it's not significant under our policy, and I don't think at this stage there's any particular feedback or suggested changes that need to be noted within the recommendation. Happy to move, Councillor Waitoa, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Kuklinski, thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Carry. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
See you later.
Go.
Item 5.4 is a fixing of the common seal, it's a little bit of an unusual one. Chief Executive, did you just want to speak to that? It's not one you will have seen before. Would you like to know what that's about, anyone?
I don't have detail to add to that, Chair.
Well, it's a licence to occupy an area of land, so it's not one we usually see, but it's an ability to use land for stop bank during a period of time. I just thought you might want to understand that a little bit more.
Sorry, can we just have a bit of a brief of, is this for our, one of our resilience flood protection projects, and which one?
I would have to come back to you, I'm afraid, Councillor. I don't have the detail on that.
I think rather than the details, which we don't have obviously, except that it's at Whakatū, I was raising the point that we use the common seal in this way, and it's quite an unusual one where obviously we need access to land, and the landowners granted us access for a period of time for that, and it could be to occupy maybe for storage or might be for access during that time. So that's what you are agreeing to as we affix a common seal. Someone happy to move that?
I'm happy to move if there are no risks. No?
We're doing, if this relates to the one at Whakatū, then we are working with HDC to improve they're doing some work to improve the flood protection of that site. We are contributing a small amount around the margins to assist them with that process.
I'm happy to second that. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. So we have, I'm not sure that, you should all have now item 5.5, which was the late paper. This is the Commissioner delegation to decide an application for a lapse date extension. Does everyone have that? It came late? Yep. And Paul's going to walk us through that?
Through you, Chair, yes.
Katrina.
Paul's going to walk you through that, and Katrina is online to assist.
Thank you. Welcome, Paul.
Thank
Welcome,
you,
Katrina.
Good morning, councillors, and
Morning.
apologies for the lateness of the paper. Essentially, this relates to a suite of resource consents that are held by Water Holdings Hawke's Bay Limited, which relate to damming of the Makarara River, what was called the Rutanawha Water Storage Scheme. And it relates to the application they've made to extend the lapse dates of those consents. They made an application previously in 2022, and at that time we got a delegation to a commissioner to hear to decide on that application on behalf of Hawke's Bay Regional Council, that in conjunction with decisions on the Hastings District Council and Central Hawke's Bay District Council application. I had been proceeding on the basis that that delegation was still okay to use. Just recently, it was sort of questioned as to whether there's a risk with doing that, and yeah, the best way to sort of manage that risk is to try or to ask to seek that delegation is confirmed again, so that Mr. McMahon, who is the commissioner that is working on the decision, can carry on and make a final decision, which is not too far away.
Thank you. Katrina, can you just remind everyone of the scope of this paper and our role only in the delegation, quite separate from the consenting process?
Sure, Chair. So we'll remember from the beginning of the term that delegations under the RMA are a function that cannot be delegated through the Chief Executive. So the power to delegate needs to be done through the Council. So when we put decision making out to an independent decision maker, the decision needs, the ability to make that decision needs to be delegated by Council. The role that the council has is in giving that delegation. The decision lies with the decision maker.
Thank you. Any questions? Paper? Okay. Then there are three options. Option 3 is the one that staff are recommending, but is there anyone willing to move and second one of these options? Option 3 is confirming Mr. McMennon's previous delegation, and it's the lowest risk approach. So this is us ensuring that we have the proper delegation. We don't put ourselves at risk of not reconfirming the delegation. Councillor Kuklinski, move option 3. I'm happy to second that.
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Roadley. Okay. I'm seeing puzzled faces around the table. Is there any other questions or comments? No? We have a mover and a seconder? Okay, thank you. I'll put that motion to the table. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Thanks, Paul. Item 6.2 is the Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazard Strategy. And we're welcoming back Simon and Chris. Councillor Van Beek, would you like to make some opening comments?
Similar motion, actually, as before. So what I said before regarding reimagining rivers, exactly the same for this process. No,
Copy and paste.
it feels the same, you know, deja vu, you know. In 2 weeks' time will be a fortnight further. Anyway, get that one. Once again, the community has really taken this on board. And in this particular process, I've seen people who are visionaries who've actually taken this really on board and taken the community with them. We've got one resident, and he is, I think, the chair of the West Shore Community Association. And he has been really focused on sand, on how can we get sand back on the West Shore. And he's really taken it on board, and the community has come with him. Not that everybody agreed with him, but that's where they're going to land, and you'll hear from them in due time. The Hamoana Tiwonga process, which has really been a community process, more so than, I think, the northern cell. But again, they have somebody there who's got a lot of time to write in great detail what they would like to see happen for the future. Also, they have talked about somewhat more the funding than the northern cell has. And they, as you will find out in due time, they've actually taken on board that, that the community, the targeted community, will need to come to the table to achieve what they think is the right outcome. So that's something, just as a forewarning, what is going to come, and that's actually what we've asked from them. Again, the team has done fantastic work, especially Simon, under some trying circumstances at time, driving backwards and forwards from his place of residence in Taupo, being here. It is definitely the focus groups are in a really good place and are really happy with the outcome. So that's a good thing. Again, with Reimagining Rivers, it's something that the community are going to put forward, and I think they're on board with. They've had, and no doubt, I'm just straying now in Simon's territory, we've put surveys out, and they've been well attended, and we've got good responses back. I haven't seen, and the team still working on it. But that's an indication of how well the process has gone. So once again, Simon, thank you for your work, and also the focus group themselves. They've done a stellar job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've got some IT issues.
IT issues.
So maybe just while that's loading up. Just start?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the first thing to note is this is the first in a sequence of 3, I guess, interactions with this council. Today is really about context setting and providing background as a reminder for some of you, and I guess new information for some of you around where this work's come from and where it's heading. Leading into an April workshop directly with community members. So today's a bit really prepping for that. And then into a May decision item. So that's our sequence. Today's about really setting the scene and welcoming questions. The paper is reasonably long as a result, so apologies for that, but the idea was to provide with enough context and background to support engagement in the April workshop. So I think I'll take the paper as read, and then the plan was to go through a few slides to provide a bit more background and context And once that's up and running, I can do that. And maybe in the meantime, I'll just chat to you about what's in there. So there was a few things I wanted to cover in the presentation. The first is discussing with you what the problem is, so why we're trying to do this work in the first place. Then I'd like to highlight the proposed response and how we got there, and particularly touching on the Memorandum of Transition, which sets out how this work is intended to be implemented. Then I'll touch on the key barriers, sort of why we got stuck, at least why we got stuck most recently. There's been a few barriers to this work along the way. I'll touch then on the community engagement approach that Councillor Bakes just talked about, and then kind of those next steps, where to from here. So I'll just start chatting away and we'll probably catch up at some point with the IT. Or we could try.
Give it a try. It doesn't
Have you got the slides in your docs on tap?
No, I don't think they've got slides in
It's a USB-C.
Okay, do you want to have a couple of minute break while they sort out the IT, or do you want them to keep talking without the slides?
The slides are quite important because it was a bit of a background, particularly for new councillors, to take them on the journey of the last 10 years in a lightning.
Let's wait for the slides.
Let's wait for the slides. Okay, let's take a couple of minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
What about some questions in the meantime? What about some questions in the meantime?
Questions? You want questions already?
It's going to cost a lot of money, and based on our current settings around targeting and targeted rates and general rate, that they're likely to have to front with that bulk of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been a really challenging topic to grapple with because the answer is always, it depends, right? We've got a capital values-based rating system, so it depends what your CV is what you pay. Then it depends what the costs are coming in, and then it depends on what split you take with targeted versus general rates. We have been clear that the original intent from the Joint Committee was to follow the flood control scheme approach of the 70-30, and that resulted in outcomes this council felt were unacceptable and just not doable, and that's why we're re-engaging. And the way to change that would be to either and change the cost coming in, so reduce that, or and split it a different way. And so the conversations have been focused more on those two main levers. How might you reduce the cost coming in and or split it differently? We have, through some sort of very coarse rating models, shown them some possible outcomes for that, but it was necessarily coarse because lots of that still has to be determined by this council around how you might split.
So just to round that out, because we on the 27th of May, we're looking at a decision to progress this into the long-term plan discussion.
Yes.
In doing so, that sort of lands back at the regional our council desk here.
Yes.
Would we have confidence that the stakeholders, if you like, want to support that in the decision making, or are in tune with it? Is that where we will be?
That's certainly the intention. Again, it depends on the outcome, I suppose, of decision-making, but I'll talk to you shortly about the sorts of inputs that will help with that decision-making process. So we're going to have direct advice from the communities. Alongside that, we've got a couple of surveys, one of which is focused on funding, and it asks specific questions around things like how much would you pay in a targeted rate if you live on the coast?
And we did a Section 18, 24 months.
Yeah, true. And there was actually some engagement about 2 years ago now on asking the wider community if they'd support the concept of this council taking a lead role, and that showed good support for that process, albeit back then.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the slides. We've really only got about half an hour. We can go a bit over. How long are we thinking we need?
So I think we're in your hands. So as Simon outlined, we're here this month, next month, and the month after. So this is an introductory piece.
Right.
The presentation is really based on the 10-year journey about how we got here. So everyone's sort of on the same page, and then we'll be providing the more detail. So
okay,
it's
there's
really
lots
in
more
your
to come.
hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe take us through the whole slide pack and we'll have questions at the end. We'll see what the...
Thank you, Chair. And I might go over reasonably lightly and we can double back on questions. So I've talked through this already.
Yes,
this is what I'm going to cover. So in broad terms, the problem, so obviously sea level rise, climate change is driving a lot of this, has been for some time. This chart just shows that we've got already records of sea level rise around New Zealand specifically, going back to the 1900s. We have had increased sea level rise already measured. And going forward from this point, we just don't know what will happen. There's lots of possible outcomes here from 1.5 metres or more, or down to less than half a metre, depending on how the globe does. So the key message here is we've had sea level rise, we'll get more, but we don't know how much or when. Keep clicking through. Add to the complexity, hopefully that's clearer there. We do have vertical land movement happening. So this is some national science challenge work which use satellites to determine how land might be moving, and the news in Hawke's Bay wasn't great. If you can work out there, the colour coding, the darker the dot, the greater the rate, and if it's blue, it's going down, if it's red, it's going up. So for this coastline, it's all blue, so we're all going down, and north of the port's going down a little bit quicker, so around that 3 to 4 mils per year, which over a long time frame really exacerbates that sea level rise issue. And then one more click if you can, Chris. This just shows the local process elements on top of this. So we do have this south to north drift of sediment, being gravel and sand naturally, based on how the predominant wave patterns go. And largely, if you look at that area of the strategy with Tangoio in the north and Clifton in the south, with the port in the middle, we have this common story where in the southern part of each of those sort of coastal cells, it's eroding and it's building up more towards the north, and that pattern repeats north of the port. So really eroding at west shore and then building up towards the north. And the right-hand side of that slide, there's that image there. Council has some incredible historical records done by annual cross-sections of these locations, and some of the records go back to the 70s, so a really good long-term data set on how this coastline's been changing. And you can see there that in the red is where we've got this long-term trend of erosion, and in the blue, this long-term trend of accretion. So you can see Bayview, kind of Estdale eroding, Marine Parade all accreting, and that's that same story around eroding in the south, building up in the north in general. And this manifests in various ways, and this really goes to the heart of why this work has started. There's been a bunch of actions taken on this coastline already, all led by TAs with HBRIC in more of an advisory and regulatory capacity, but those images show a bunch of these kind of street actions which have happened in response to hotspot issues, which I think you'll be familiar with most of those. The most recent on the right-hand side there being the Eco Reef installation at Tiawonga. But really the story here is a long history of these issues, but really a lack of strategic oversight for how to respond. Which gets us to this work. So we are following national guidance and have been since day one. This was the first project in the country to follow this process, which has added complexity, but also I think added rigour to the process. This is called dynamic adaptive pathways at the heart of it, but this 10-step cycle is what the government suggests we follow for how we make decisions about coastal hazards in particular. That big yellow arrow points to where we are now. So we're somewhere between step 7 and 8. We've got a pretty good plan of what we want to do. We're really figuring out how then to implement that step. And a note here that nationally, a lot of councils and communities have followed this process. Many have. Lots of them following how Hawke's Bay approached it and kind of refining and building on that. I'm not aware of very many, if any, that have sort of got from 7 firmly into 8. So particularly when it comes to how do you pay for this stuff, that has been the major barrier for all of these projects around the country, particularly with things like retreat. It's a huge problem we haven't really landed nationally. This just highlights our focus area. So as mentioned, Tangoio to Clifton in the north. This was picked originally because of all those live issues I mentioned, but also it's the most populated stretch of the coastline in Hawke's Bay, and also involves 3 councils with overlapping areas. The idea originally was this would provide a bit of a model to roll out regionally. Once we'd landed, worked out the how, we could then roll it out to other parts of the coastline in the future. We're set up in this way from early on to be really a community up type project. So the community panel process I'll speak to shortly, informing things. A joint committee formed by governors from your partners. A fairly recent change to put HBRC there in the decision-making seat, supported by me as an independent project manager and a tag group, all of which are still active. And just a note here, there's been a lot of work informing this. This has been a long journey, but a lot of rigour sits in behind that. There's a lot of technical work that has been done, listed on the screen there, including cultural values, economic analysis, risk assessment work, and through the community panels, a really rigorous process to look at options, shortlist, and then suggest a preferred way forward. And just on those panels, this remains really, in my view, the heart of our project still to this day, although this is going back a little bit in time. So they were active back in 2017, 2018. There's a northern panel focused on the coastline from the port north and a southern focused on the coast south to Clifton. Broadly constituted, including mana whenua, coastal communities, inland communities, dock, business interests, that sort of thing. They worked closely together for about 14 months to come up with their advice. So again, a really rigorous and well-considered process. And this is what they produced. So this was presented to the Joint Committee and all councils back in February 2018. That report's still available online and worth a read. Identified along the coastline 9 priority areas where a long-term adaptive pathway was required. Other areas will be required in future, but these are the first 9. And for each of those, recommended a long-term adaptive pathway, which I'll explain a little bit shortly how they work. The job then was about how do we translate this community-based advice into an actionable council strategy. That was led by the Joint Committee through these 7 or 8 interrelated work streams to produce the Joint Committee's recommended strategy, which on the next slide was finalised in July 2024. So that sets out some context in Part A and Part B, the recommended strategic direction, and in Part C, implementation, including an action plan. In that action plan, there are 20 recommended actions. They cover a broad range of things, including mātauranga Māori, regulatory changes and direction, consenting, funding, design, that sort of thing. And importantly, recommends urgent or immediate action at 4 locations to get us started. That's the Joint Committee's recommended approach. That's been received by this council, but remains a draft proposal at this stage. And just touching briefly on adaptive pathways, this is how it looks in this strategy. They look a little bit different in other places around the country, but the concept's the same, where you identify the first action you will take in response to your issues. You then monitor for change, and when the trigger point is hit, you then move to the next step in the pathway. In this process, we've defined the next steps. So if we pick on one, say, what's a good example, home moana, where we're recommending initially control structures, which are basically groins and gravel nourishment, continuing that out to the medium term, but then shifting to a retreat response. That's a recommended pathway for now. I'd say that medium-term and long-term options are indicative, though. We simply don't know if those will remain fit for purpose when we get to that point. So the idea here is you take your first action and you monitor for change and take the next step appropriately. So if I touch then briefly on what those four immediate actions I talked about before might look like. For Bayview, recommended just we add some gravel nourishment. So currently this doesn't happen at Bayview, but suggested that gravel would help build up that beach crest and offset erosion losses. So the image shows gravel being put on gravel beach, so kind of hard to show, but it's just a nourishment program, so soft engineering essentially. At the moment, Bayview is still accreting or reasonably stable, so it may not be a straightaway action, but as time goes on, this might be required. Then at West Shore, really it's continuing what we currently do there. So at the moment, which is all general rates or endowment funded, there is a gravel nourishment program happening there right now, as you know. That's proposed to continue, complemented by offshore sand nourishment. We've heard recently the port's going to double what they currently do through sand nourishment, so that's a real bonus for this community. And I'll come back to how that might reflect proposed next actions. For Homewater Tiawanga, a little more complex, but this is where the only part initially where some hard structures are proposed. So there's a couple of variants for this. There's an A and a B. So A is described, I suppose, as a capital light operational heavy type response, where all we're doing here is extending the existing groin at the Tukutuki River mouth and then using gravel to offset erosion losses. And flick on to the next slide for Tiawanga, again option A, no hard structures at all, just using gravel to offset erosion losses and build up some beach crest to help with inundation risks. And for option B, it's the reverse, so it's more capital intensive, but the payoff is reduced operational costs. So here we've got more hard structures costing more upfront, but by virtue of that, you're holding more gravel and sand in place, requiring then less ongoing nourishment, so lower operational costs. So here's option B for Homewater, and down the coast at Tiawanga, a little hard to see maybe, but 3 short groins to the north of the community there to help hold that gravel in place. These are the cost estimates for these actions. So these are indicative. Importantly, they're not based on detailed design, but only on concept plans. So they're plus or minus 50% at this stage. But you can see here we've got, I guess, the strategies response in the blue. So that's for Homewater, those 2 variants. You can see where for C2, for example, 4.7 million in capital, and then D2, 10 million. So a big jump in capital, but you're roughly halving your ongoing operational costs. And this assumes you're doing all of that work initially, so these costs are high. And then there's a version in the green where if you were to try and build up less beach crest, so more focus on erosion, how you might save some costs. So it shows there are ways we could significantly reduce costs by tweaking the design approach. Likewise for Tiawanga, similar arrangement, high capital costs for the option B, lower operational costs, and then a variant where you might focus more on erosion and the sort of savings you could potentially see by doing that. For Bayview West Shore, there isn't really there's really only one option there. This shows sort of high operational costs. Again, at Bayview, not required right now. At West Shore, likely you would increase over time. So not a day one thing, but over time, those are the costs that you might start to see. For context, I think the annual spend in West Shore now on gravel nourishment is about $350,000 per year. And this, don't read all this, but it's just indicating that those costs, quick transition, thanks Chris, those costs have been well sort of built up with a bit of rigour behind them. That was the main message for that slide. So this MOT, so I'll just talk to this very briefly, if I can flick on to the next one. So one of the major barriers we had was how to implement this work. This is a challenge that many councils struggle with. Really, when it comes down to it, which LTP would this work sit in? And lots of different variations of how you might do that between the different councils. And we got a bit stuck working out how best to achieve that. So Raynor Asher, KC, was engaged to lead a funding review. He came back pretty firmly to recommend that HBRIC should lead that. He had 3 or 4 main reasons for that. The councils agreed in principle and signed a memorandum of transition to give effect to that. So that's still in place. We're still following the process set out in that, albeit we're a bit behind in time. And as mentioned, HBRC did consult with the community before entering into that MOT and got good support for confirming that it would lead this work into the future. So now we're pretty much up to the present day almost. So the key barrier we have now is this question of cost and who pays for it. So the Joint Committee completed their advice, their draft strategy in 2024, presented it to this council. Alongside that was a draft funding model. It was designed to follow the flood control scheme funding approach, the 70% targeted, 30% general. But when councillors received it at this table, the timing couldn't have been worse. For one, it was just after Gabrielle. Cost of living crisis was in full swing, and I guess remains so today. And really it was considered by this council that the costs at an individual ratepayer level from that strategy with that funding approach would not be acceptable in that current time and context. So elected instead to defer precedent implementation and instead re-engaging with the community to test those costs and options. That was in January 2025. And so really in a nutshell, if you break it all down, the reason we got stuck is if you follow the same flood control approach of that 70-30 split, we have reasonably high costs, but a very low number of properties. And so the maths of that arrangement just don't work very well in a coastal context. So this engagement approach, which we started in about May last year, was designed to look a little bit like this, with HBRC there as the receiver and decision maker of the outcomes. We have a community reference group who is kind of the compiler, if you like, and then underneath that, a range of direct engagement feeding up to the CRG. I'll keep flicking through reasonably quickly. Really, the bulk of the work's been done by these focus groups. They were set up to look at the locations where those initial works are proposed. So Bayview West Shore was a northern group and Tiawonga Homewana for the southern. This CRG had this collation role, as mentioned. Our Mataranga Māori work stream is working alongside that. Alongside that, there's a range of drop-in sessions, surveys, webinars and live stream, website refresh, animation. So really quite a concerted effort to raise a profile of this work and try and help people understand why it's been done, why it's important and how we might move forward with it. So we are really wrapping up now. The focus groups had the last meetings in early March and the CRG had their last meeting a couple of weeks ago. The funding survey is the second of two surveys that we've run. That closed about a week ago. We've had 220 responses, so we're really happy with that result. It's a really quite good response rate, we think, and some really interesting data is coming through from that. We will crunch the numbers and present that back to this table. Alongside that, as mentioned, we are working on some cultural values frameworks. Mana Ahuriri has had theirs complete and they've endorsed it, and that provides a bit of a framework for engaging on next steps. Maunga Huru Tangitu Trust, theirs is underway through an external advisor, with Tamatia Pōkai Whenua's to come. So I've already covered this briefly, but today is really about trying to provide that high-level context and background for councillors ahead of this critical meeting end of April, where you will hear directly from CRG and focus group members. How that will look is there is an overall CRG report which captures kind of the process and outcomes at a high level. There's also a dedicated focus group report from each of the northern and southern focus groups, and that goes into that really community-specific outcome they are seeking and advice to councillors on how they want to see this thing move forward alongside those survey outcomes. We would like to invite you to a site visit, potentially on the 12th of May. I think we're still confirming that date, again to help really build that context around why this work's important, what's been proposed, how it looks on the coast, that sort of thing. So that invite will come to you shortly, leading into that May council meeting, seeking a decision to advance into the long-term plan. That might be my last slide, is it? Are there other slides if we...
dot.
We'll pause those.
I'll pause those.
So that's it, Chair. Happy to go to questions.
Great. Simon, so the big question I think is going to be, are we going to get enough from, we've got a morning workshop on that Wednesday, that's 9 till 12 by the looks of it, and then we'll have a site visit. So it's really making sure that we're going to be able to dig enough into those conversations and thinking to be able to help inform our decision at the end of April. And it'll be that decision will be asking whether we're progressing this strategy into our long-term plan thinking. That doesn't mean we're adopting it, it means we will be putting it in and taking it out to consultation. And I see your point, Councillor Curtin, you're saying, are we making sure, A, that we know the stakeholder reference groups have been clear on the money and that we are also going out clearly with that before we step into that process. Yeah, okay. So any questions for the team? Councillor Waitoa.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Great presentation and slides, and great help, Chris. My one's just around the current financial exposure. In the slides back, you had our partner councils, Napier City Council, Hastings District Council.
Sure.
On point 30, it says in February the 2025 Hastings District Council advised that they would relocate its funding contribution from July 25 onwards, reducing its cost. Also, Napier City Council also advised that it would also release its contribution. And then down in 33, we've got the budget is now fully committed. NCC and HDC have confirmed that no further funding is available at this stage. So I guess the question is, what is our financial exposure, and have we had any other feedback from those two councils? Because I do see we did have a MOU as well back with those.
So through the chair, so Hastings very clearly made a decision of council last year for the annual plan and removed their 100k contribution to this project. And I followed that up recently with their CFO and Deputy CE around an ability for Hastings to contribute or find a way to contribute. They were very clear that their council had made a decision, and so certainly from a staff perspective, they need to abide by that decision. And certainly from my perspective, the matter is probably not sufficient to go to council for more decisions. Again, with Napier, followed up with their Deputy CE and GM, who confirmed that Napier's position is that they are unable to contribute at this moment in time. And we're a little bit more open, and in fact connected their ability to contribute to Hastings. So it's like a double jeopardy. So our exposure is I think we're forecasting to be somewhere between 50 to 100k over budget. Obviously, to stop the project, a couple of weeks ago, cold, when we're so close to the finish, in my view, would have been inappropriate. So we're just sort of working through how we can fund it. We've wrapped up all of the majority of cost burden. So in terms of some of our specialist contractors, etc., they've now finished up. So it really is running this lean process over the next couple of months to get some guidance on where this project goes. So yes, disappointing that we didn't get that contribution. To do a cold stop now and not go into a deficit, in my view, would be problematic. And we're just working through potential solutions, and they'd probably come in more of an overall finance paper than a specific issue for a $50,000 sort of problem. So we're working hard as we can to minimise that, but we do have some exposure there. It's relatively small given our size and scale.
So managing it within existing budgets, and now you'll come back to us
ultimately,
with
so
another.
that goes into the whole wrap up for the end of financial year position for the organisation, because there's many unders and overs.
That is, exactly. Thank you. Councillor Parsons, and then Councillor
I just wanted to add to Conrad's point there. I just found it quite extraordinary that the reason that Napier City Council has pulled their funding was because they wanted to see a direct benefit to the Napier ratepayers for this project. I find that extraordinary that they can't see the direct benefit to their ratepayer, especially when we can almost see it from where we're sitting. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Councillor Curtin.
Well, Madam Chair, just to even emphasise that further, I wonder if, Chris, you could bring up that coastline image, either West Shore or and you can see there
one with the trees
assets
and the water
being protected. That one there, that's fine. Oh, that one there. What is being protected is a Napier City Council road and infrastructure that goes with that. So it emphasises the point that, and my question is, what would be, if in the rating discussion, what what charge would we apply to NEMA City Council to protect their asset?
Thank you. I'm assuming that was rhetorical. Point made. Everybody. Councillor Roadley.
Just reiterating the previous comments, that's
Yes.
also my thing. A bit more of a technical question maybe for you, Chris. Do you have any crystal ball that tells you if you went ahead with those groins, the short groins, what sort of lifespan they would have in that environment?
So I think part of that comes down to the options of whether it's a full coastal inundation versus erosion.
Well, as planned in option B, you've got them drawn in.
Yeah.
So at that scale, how long are they going to last? You invest in it?
So 50 years plus is the typical life for a strong rock groin. Yep. So that's the typical lifespan.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor McIntosh?
I'm sorry if I've missed something, but the reports we get at the end of April, are they going to be giving us costs in the context of potential costs to ratepayers, especially targeted ratepayers, given the disquiet we had around that number when we first looked at it?
So a great question. So maybe flick to that slide if you would, Chris, with the time frame. So the reports in April were coming direct from the community. We had a big discussion at those tables around how we might approach this question of cost. And end of the day, they felt it was very difficult for them to say, as a focus group, we will pay this. Because they're a small slice of that community, everyone's different. What's affordable to person A won't be to person B. So what you'll get is more what's important to them, what they'd like this council to do and move forward with. And I won't take their thunder in terms of what they're seeking specifically, but it's, I think, really pragmatic requests for staged investment over time and just to get going with some practical initial steps.
Okay, so they're going to give us that direction in the context of knowing what the numbers are.
In broad sense, again, this is kind of the challenge, right? So the slides I had before showed the costs as developed by the strategy for the strategy's proposed options, but they are based on concept plans. So as one example, the community said to us, well, please invest in that next stage of detailed design so we can get a much better bead on the precise costings and know a bit more about what we're signing up for. And they've asked to be involved in that process. So as a bit of a forecast for you, they're suggesting investment in design to get those costs much more refined and narrowed down, perhaps with some tweaking around precise actions to get something much more sort of affordable and pragmatic.
Okay. And sorry, one further one. So in doing the design, is it going to be ring fenced in the knowledge that Rolls-Royce is likely to be out of the equation, and so the design's not going to dish something up that's going to be completely impractical in terms of being able to fund it?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that. I think there is a strong understanding that those living on the coast that benefit need to contribute. I think that's consistent across both groups. There's an understanding then that the actions we take can't be at such a level that you rate people off their properties or they can't afford to live there anymore. So they're really looking for a pragmatic, sensible way forward.
Okay.
A lot of the conversations focused on, well, what about insurance? If you do nothing, we lose insurance and we lose everything potentially. So there's a real pragmatism coming through in that advice, I think.
Would you like to move to receive the report, Councillor Van Beek?
Yep.
Councillor McElroy?
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you for the slideshow. Sort of sit back and been around for about 8 years. So I remember it coming in. And so I like the model. It was very thorough, a lot of community engagement and inclusivity. Mana whenua as well, which is expected. So you said in your kōrero, at 10 years, you have to work out the how. So it looks like you've got the template, the how. Because I can remember sitting back and going, Clifton to Tangoio, and I understand the population thing, but there's also the vulnerability thing on the coastline, and there's a whole lot of coastline in Hawke's Bay. So you know where I'm going. What's next?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So A few things to note. As I mentioned earlier on, this is always intended to be a model to roll out to other parts of the coast. And I know particularly in CHB, there's been some requests from down there for further input. That's the first thing. The second thing is that even within the strategy area, we're recommending 4 places initially to start with, but there are others. So when it comes to the funding model, I think that's a critical consideration, and that's partly why this work's so important. Right now, for example, in West Shore, there is a wholly subsidised action being taken to respond to coastal hazards. It's all general rates funded. In Homewana, there's nothing. And so there is inequity. From the southern group, for example, they've mentioned that if you live by a river, you pay for it, but you get some protection from river flooding. On the coast, you get nothing. So there's a real desire here to put in place that strategic region-wide approach that brings a more equitable outcome, but also thinks about where this is heading in the future. To your point, we can't keep spending lots in small locations, have a pragmatic sort of long-term response. So I haven't got a full answer for you other than to say you're touching on the key need for this work. We can't keep working in isolation and responding to hotspots.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor McRoy. Would you like to second the receiving paper, Councillor Parsons? Yes. Last question from Councillor Roadley.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence. Actually, probably for you, Yerif. Thinking about the lean mean machine you're rolling out henceforth, have you put some thought into the 29 April presentation of those groups, which would be fantastic, and actually widening, somehow getting that presentation out to the wider community via Teams links or
I would say anything that we talk about should be a public discussion, because again, when we decide to actually go to LTP and include an LTP, the better they are informed, the better they actually can make a decision in the end. Because I believe it is their decision. It's not so much our decision, it's their decision who are there, and the general public as well. So I think we need to throw it as wide as we can, and I endorse your comments. Thank you.
Just maybe think a little bit about, I've got some ideas on how we might do that very efficiently.
Thank you, Councillor Roadley. Would you like to make any more comments?
No, I think it's all been said. It's really, really good. It's definitely important. The article over the weekend said it somewhat, where the Southern Cell made a point. We feel that we actually not actually treated the same as other areas, and somewhat I need to agree with them on that one. So we'll listen to that and move on. Thank you.
Councillor Parsons, any further
I just wanted to remind everybody of our 3 pillars, and flood risk does include coastal inundation and erosion. So I'd like to keep that in the top of everybody's minds when we are thinking about this, because it is important.
Yes. Thank you. Some comments, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you.
Can you just be aware of the time for us as well?
Oh, look, yeah,
Thank
10
you.
minutes will be fine.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, sustained.
Look, it's not like me to be disagreeable, but...
have you agreed to anything today?
Thank you. I'll add another minute on, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the chronology, excellent. Gives councillors a feel for the long journey we've been on, 12 years. I've started off in the inaugural Coastal Hazard Group, and the irony I find now with Napier City and Hastings District, probably the reason why we're facing reform, or the need for reform, is initiated essentially by those 2 local authorities. This regional council was somewhat of a passive bystander in it, invited to join, and here we are, a bit like a tar baby. We've just been stuck while those others walk away. I'd have to disagree with the Deputy Chair around the analogy between coastal hazard and flood protection. They are starkly different beasts. In the first instance, the local authorities are the consenting authorities for the built environment. They must carry that responsibility. We've ended up with it. We're the consenting authority. How we ended up in this place beggars belief. There is a difference between river or flooding on the land and coastal hazard. And what we're dealing with is if you like, a slow process. One of the choosing of those people that live in that environment, a small number of high value properties, that the expectation is that the rest of the region will cover the cost of protecting those properties. Quite a different scenario as we've experienced through Gabriel, where we have widespread impact from a flood on land versus what happens from threat from the sea. I just don't accept that argument that we can accept parity between the two scenarios. Thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting me and giving me another minute of conversation.
Are you finished? Thank you, Councillor Curtin.
So, Madam Chair, I think we need to be cautious going forward about how we treat this. There is an equity issue that needs to be dealt with, and to accept at face value the analogy with flooding is something that I think needs more exploration.
Thank you, Councillor Curtin. You will have an opportunity to speak, of course, at the public meeting when we decide whether or not we adopt the strategy. And I also acknowledge that we haven't had the details through the workshop of actually what those funding models are. So take your comments, but they will be more appropriate, I think, to the time where we have a discussion on adopting the strategy. And I'm going to call it there because we are a little bit behind time, but your points are noted.
And I must say that a strong reply will be returned. I've just had this now for the last 7 years, and I'm not going to put up with it.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. Right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To receive the report. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to go on a little bit longer. There was a little bit of a muck-up in our timing. We're going to receive our update, NIWE update. Right now we have about 15 minutes for that, and then we will move into public excluded before we break before lunch. Thanks, everyone.
Through you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
Through you, Chair.
We're doing it. Dynamic duo.
I think we're reached a really significant point across a lot of the NIWE programme, with a lot now in construction. Just note that Mr Casely has been driving that project really expertly over the last 18 months and is going to step aside and allow James then to take over the direct leadership of the project from the end of this month. So it's his last meeting in that role, but happily he is back joining us roughly 4 days a week to assist the project as we head through the next stages. So I just wanted to note that particular milestone.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Your very last meeting in this role with us, so you can be flamboyant or take exceptions, and I'll probably let them go. Yeah.
We have final reply, though.
Welcome.
Do you want to say anything? Nothing further from me. I'll just hand directly to Andrew.
All right. Thank you, councillors. Yes, it's hard to believe that I've been here for whatever the time period is when Nick phoned me in November 2024, but it's good to reflect back on the progress that we've made, and this update should reinforce that. So look, I'll pass over to James, who's just going to give some program high-level updates for you, and then I'll just quickly drop through each of the projects that we've got with just a quick update. Of course, I'll leave Wairoa to the side because we've got a public excluded item on that after lunch.
Thank you.
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for the time this afternoon. Looking across the program as a whole, financially, we remain in a very healthy place as we've continued to have our tenders come through to market. For our projects in active construction, we remain on budget, and particularly in the use of contingency. We still have robust amounts of contingency through that. I would just touch on the fuel price impact at the moment. We have been working with our contractors around mitigation of that to an extent. Contractually, we don't have any immediate exposure, but we are working through with our contractors on a fair and practical and reasonable approach as to how we best navigate the current times. For the contracts we have in negotiation at the moment, which is for Parker 5 Korongahau and as mentioned, Wairoa, we are also navigating a pathway forward with them. I won't comment specifically on that, as mentioned, under contract negotiations at the moment. But we, as alluded to, we are attempting to take a fair and reasonable approach, so that it's not one-sided at any stretch of the imagination. We still remain within the overall program budget, even taking into account some scenarios that we've planned out in terms of the fuel and our exposure to that. So we remain confident that our forecasting and our ability to deliver within budget has not been derailed by this at all. A couple of other things just to note. The change process that we had mentioned last month was underway, has been completed. So we are implementing that as we speak, and that will be fully underway by the end of this financial year. Obviously, Andrew's role is part of that, but just making sure that we are right-sized for the go forward as we roll off projects that are completed over the next couple of months and turn our focus towards the 3 big deliverables that we have by June of next year. Consent and compliance, we continue to track well. No current concerns on the consenting front. All our OIC consents for the land categories have been lodged and approved, and we are actively monitoring those through construction at the moment. We're currently working on our RMA consents for the Levels of Service project and our pump station project consent as well. I just wanted to highlight the community and cultural monitoring update. As discussed in last month's update, we have supplied some additional information around that and colour, so obviously taking the paper as read. I just wanted to call out the setting up of the engagement roles that we've been working very close with our community on, developing their own capability, providing practical experience, and leveraging the community resources available for that. I think that additional partnership that we have shown has really returned dividends to us on the social front from the feedback that we've received from the community, and we'll of course continue to update on this specifically as we go along. At a very program level note, I'll stop there knowing the time.
Great, thanks James. Just a couple of other high-level program comments, and that is that we're experiencing leakage of people. Programs inevitably face this, that as the endpoint gets closer, people make decisions around what their future employment positions will be. We're seeing that now. So we've had a number of resignations that we are dealing with predominantly by engaging appropriate resources from the private sector to help support us through to the end of the program. And programs that I've been involved in the past, this is just typical. It's never easy to manage, but it's just typical of what happens in programs of this sort. There's an end date, you start completing projects, you don't need the same resource requirement, people will look around with their options. So that's just what we're experiencing now. We're confident we're dealing with it as best we can and making sure that we resource the projects as we need to. Just the final one, and just adding to what James said around the cost pressure, obviously with what's going on with fuel prices now, and that feeds into every part of our economy, as we know, because it just embeds in every part of our society, is that we are having very good conversations with our contractors. As James said, yes, there are contractual terms, but in our view, if you put contractors under too much pressure, you will pay a price at the end of the day for it. So while we will never be as soft in terms of how we engaged, neither are we going to be unrealistic and unreasonable. So I'd just like to leave you with that comment as we work through that. And we are being quite deliberate around what costs we will pay for and what we won't and how we approach that, and we're having good constructive comments about that. But I'll just state the obvious, our 3 largest projects are yet to commence, and that's where the most fuel will be consumed. The biggest issue in our mind is actually supply. Price is one thing, you can somehow deal with that. If you can't get diesel to fill excavators, tanks or trucks, you can do nothing. That to me is the biggest risk to this project around our timeframes for completion. Who knows what that will play out like. Madam Chair, just a quick comment about each project. Waiheke due to finish towards the latter part of April. They have predominantly done the earthworks associated with the project. They're now putting the matting down, and that's progressing well. Whirinaki, the road raise there should be completed within the next week to 10 days, subject to weather. They were due to seal today, but probably won't because they need probably 24 hours without rain. And we have forecast rain within the next 24 hours.
Yay!
Yay on one hand, not on the other. So a little unfortunate, but we're working closely with Fulton Hogan, the contractor there, to see it sealed and that part of the project completed. The stop bank works, and for some of you would have seen that, have been progressing really well on the residential side, which is the seaside, with material coming in from the Panpack Quarry 10 kilometres away. We hope to be able to give the contractor access to the residential part of the stop bank parallel to the state highway when that road raise is complete in the next 10 days. So that's further progress again. We've agreed the first part of the project plan for work on the Panpack site around the Transpower substation, so that's ready to go when the contractor's ready to go. The difficult log yard is yet to be finalised, but we're working our way through. Ohiti, that will complete next month as well. We've struck a couple of ugly parts in that project around alignments behind the houses where we've come across a hell of a lot of rubbish. And we struck the same thing in Parongaho as well, and it's expensive getting rid of rubbish that you can't deal with by chipping or whatever. So we're just having to deal with that, and we'll go out on site tomorrow to get a better feel for it. Parkify is taking a lot of our attention. We still have about 12 or 14 properties to secure land access with. They are all poised, but being poised and having got agreement is not the same thing. And so we are just trying to get those agreements over the line, because we have a contractor in Hickbro who are itching to get on with it, but until we have more land access agreements locked away, we can't. And there's a couple of other things that we're needing to comply with around the consent conditions as well. What I am pleased to report is that we have substantial agreement with the Joan Fernie Charitable Trust, and so that's a big step forward, and hope to have signed agreements with them even this week. And if not this week, I'm very confident that we will have it next week. So that is a major step forward, given how much time and effort by both sides have been committed to getting that agreement. The Parongaho project has started. It's been delivered by Galbraith Earth Movers. They have been clearing the alignment. There's some very tight parts to that alignment. There are some massive mark carpet trees that need removing. That is in our target sooner than later, because we have to have them down before the bats are back, which is at the end of April. So the heat's on to get that done. But good to see that project physically starting and underway. Levels of service upgrade. We had one further project with Omahu released to market yesterday. Waipa will go into market today. So that will see all of our construction projects either with preferred contractors, signed up contractors, or tenders in market. So that's a great milestone there. We still have to go through that resource consenting process for the levels of service upgrades, which are standard RMA, to remind you. So just that gauntlet to run still. Wairoa, as I said, I'll comment on later. Pump stations, the design work is occurring through the design build with Brian Perry, some initial geotech investigation being done, and some of the design, safety and design workshops and the like are being held. Telemetry and scheme reviews are both progressing really well. Scheme reviews finished at the end of next month. Telemetry on track to complete by the end of the year with more sites for the same money. So that's a great outcome as well. So look, in summary, still got our big projects to deliver, but they are all at a good space, subject to those global issues that we all know about and how they may influence the final outcome for timing on completion. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. The fuel, obviously the fuel crisis, but also you mentioned the employment issue in backfilling with consultants. So I suppose those are two expensive words, fuel and consultants. So we meet monthly, we hear from you monthly, but I'm assuming if anything in this space becomes significant, you would, we'd have an urgent meeting of some description. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. I would just note, with the use of the external consultants, what we do gain through that is the ability to scale up or down that resource, and that is an effective solution. Given the time we have to run, we are able to limit our expense quite robustly on that.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Ormsby.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora, team. And thank you for the response and reporting the cultural monitoring aspects, and well done on managing a risk, I guess, with community engagement and mana whenua engagement. So well done on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kuklinski.
Thank you. Seems like there's some unbelievably great work going on. Just if you go into market today for Waipawa, when do you foresee some actual work on the stop bank?
Tenders close on the 28th of April. Preferred tender will be, we'll know who our preferred tender is by early May, hopefully be in contract by the middle of May, subject to resource consent, because we don't have that yet.
Yeah.
We would hope that a contractor may be on the ground towards the latter part of May.
Thank you.
And then it will be dependent as to what sort of winter we have as to whether and how much work we can get done, because the material source is run-of-river gravel.
Thank you. Councillor Rodley?
You'll be coming back for comments, won't you?
Coming back for comments, yeah.
Probably feels a bit nitpicky, but the para 30 where you note that you've got the third independent valuer. What's going on there that we need 3? We've gone down that process.
We had a deadlock on an issue around our valuations between council and Joan Fernie Charitable Trust. We both agreed to appoint a third valuer to specifically look at a couple of issues only, so not a full-blown exercise. We both agreed to be bound by the outcome. The outcome has been received. We are now bound by it.
Beautiful. And you're moving forward in that space.
And we're moving forward in that space.
Great. Great.
Councillor Parsons?
Mine was just regarding the recategorisation of the 38 properties in Whirinaki and the 11 in Ohiti. So they've obviously come out of 2C, and where have they landed?
They're no longer, through you, Chair, no longer part of land categorisation now because Category 1 is retired. They would have gone to Category 1. They're now same as every other property across Hawke's Bay.
And that would be reflected on the mapping that we're going to be receiving?
It's all been changed online now.
Yeah. Were the Category 1 properties ever advised that they're no longer in Category 1?
Not individually, because they were not individually largely written to in the first place. It was a general process to say it's now been lifted.
Thank you.
Councillor McElroy?
Kia ora. My question's around the cultural monitoring, CD3 onwards. Can you confirm whether the liaison role was something the hapu asked for or something the program put in place for them? And therefore, was it like co-designed and requested by mana whenua?
Through Chair, that was a role that the program looked at across the suite, and so we thought it was necessary to bring in. We have liaised with mana whenua to design the role in order to define the scope of it. So while initiated by us, the actual scope of it was designed in discussion with mana whenua.
Supplementary, so you mean mana whenua throughout Hawke's Bay?
I
Not
would
just one.
not throughout Hawke's Bay because it's only defined for our project delivery.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Rodley? Happy to move? Yes. Happy to second. Councillor Kuklinski. Comments? Councillor Rodley?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and great to see you stepping into that space, James. But Andrew, what big shoes you've left or you're leaving for James to take up. I've really valued the way that you've presented the project as it's come through, and it's given me great confidence, the way that you've managed all the different moving pieces, been adaptive, been responsive to our communities, to the whole shifting sands of the landscape that we work in. So a huge thank you for the work that you've done. Appreciate you.
Kia ora.
Oh, I can't top that. Well done.
No further comments from you? No, yeah, I'm just with you.
No comments.
Councillor Van Beek?
Yeah, and actually not just this table. Definitely, Andrew, the community really has enjoyed the engagement with you, at times very difficult, but you never gave up and you always turned up. And that was really important. You communicated really well, and that's immensely appreciated. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? I don't need to say any more. Mahi, Andrew. We're really going to miss you, but we're thrilled to see James so confidently leading as he did last month when you weren't here. So, as you say, big shoes, but welcome James to the role. Yeah. So we have a motion and a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. I'm going to move us into public excluded now, so we can go offline before we break for lunch. Is Is everyone clear as to the reasons we're moving into public exclude? Are there any questions? No? Someone happy to second that? Thank you, councillor McElroy. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. And we will come back